What's up guys, it's me Jeremy and welcome to my guide for Lux support. At first I thought she wasn't that great, but after playing her in a bunch of games and developing my play with her, I can easily see why she is a top tier support champion. In this guide I'll assume that you already know what Lux does, but I'll be linking the League of Legends page for Lux in the description, just in case you don't. Alright, first let's go over the pros and cons of Lux support. The first pro is that she has very high ranges. Lux outranges almost all supports and almost all AD carries as well, giving you tons of opportunities to get free harass onto your opponents. This also gives her a lot of good matchups in lane. Next is that Lux is really good at kiting. She's phenomenal protecting your AD carry during teamfights, and that allows her to do her job as a support extremely well. Another pro is that Lux snowballs really hard. This is because she is an AP support and thus scales really well with levels. If you are ahead in levels, Lux does more damage than pretty much any support. If you are equal in levels, her damage is decent, but if you're behind in levels, her damage is almost non-existent. The last pro I came up with is that she is an unconventional support, and thus a lot of people will not know how to play against her. This can make it really easy to get kills, depending on who you're playing against. Now let's move on to the cons. The first con is the most obvious, and that she is very squishy. I find myself often getting caught up in harassing and taking tons of damage despite going even in the trade, simply because her base health and armor are fairly low. That means it's important to know your limits. Another con is that she is really easy to snowball against. As mentioned earlier, if you fall behind in levels, her damage becomes really small, making it almost impossible to win fights if you're behind. The last con I came up with is that all of her skills are skill shots. This makes her kind of hard to play, and it can also make it easy to outplay her. It's important to understand that if you miss your skills, your pressure is gone until they're up again. During the laning phase with Lux, you want to play very aggressive, but safely. What this means is that you should safe poke when possible, and only do a full-on trade in solid situations where you can hit all of your skills. Make sure that you proc your passive in between skills, as this will greatly increase your laning damage output. Hitting a binding will allow your AD carry to get some good poke in as well, so setting up situations for that is optimal. Lux actually has very high damage at level 6, so if you can get some extra EXP and force a fight while your opponents are level 5, it should be an easy killer too. Also, you should always be aware of your opponent's positioning, because it's really easy for Lux to catch someone out with a quick binding into a kill. Just be sure to ward well and not get caught, since Lux is very squishy. During the teamfight phase, you want to hit your ult and W on as many high priority targets as possible, since it does do some damage, and the shield can actually do a lot if you hit everybody with it. However, you always want to save your Q and E to kite for your carry, since they are just way too strong for serving that purpose. As a support, you have to protect your carries in teamfights, so just make sure that you are doing that, as there's no reason to try to assassinate anyone, as your damage will not be high enough. One thing that I actually like about Lux support is that almost every single matchup for her is skill based. If they can dodge your skills, you will likely lose, but if you can dodge theirs, it should be fairly easy to hit your spells. Lux has a good matchup against every melee support except for Leona and Blitzcrank, because you get close enough for them to hit their skills onto you when you try to poke them. And as for range supports, I'd say Lux has a good matchup against everybody except for Zyra and maybe Lulu. Zyra because she has equal range, outdamages Lux and has more CC, and Lulu because she has way more utility and can outrange Lux if played correctly. That leaves Lux with almost every single matchup being good. It's just that they might be hard to win if your opponents are a little bit better than you, because Lux has a lot of potential to be outplayed. For the AD carry matchups, Lux does well against any AD carry that does not use their skills to harass or has poor early game damage, because she can easily safe poke them and win trades. Lux has a good AD matchup against Ashe, Vayne, Kog'Maw, Tristana, Twitch, and Caitlyn. The matchups Lux does okay in and are pretty much 100% skill based is pretty much everything else. Ezreal, Graves, Corki, Draven, Misfortune, Caitlyn, Varus, and Urgot are all skill-based matchups for Lux. The only bad matchup for Lux is Sivir, and that is simply because of her spell shield and how much it completely destroys Lux's kit during the laning phase. For ADs to play with Lux, I would want someone with high early game damage to coordinate with Lux's early game strength. I would want to play Lux with Ezreal, Corki, Graves, Draven, Misfortune, or Varus. Playing with other carries is okay though, because if you can get just a few kills, you can snowball really hard and carry teamfights. For my masteries, I take a setup that is the same to my Sona and Lulu page, which is a 1-14-15 page, with mana regen and utility. For runes, I also take the same page as I do on Lulu and Sona, with armor reds, 4 armor yellows, and 5 mana regen yellows, and magic resistance blues to go with my movement speed quints. You can substitute gold quints if you'd like. The move quints are just more for my style of play. The reason why we take so much mana regen is because without it, Lux has huge mana issues. But because of it and some early mana regen items like a Philosopher's Stone, her mana issues are non-existent, and you can see that that was not listed as one of her cons. For summoner spells, I take my standard Flash and Exhaust, for immense kiting and to have an escape. For the skill order, you want to max E first and Q second. Put a point into your W at level 4, as it can be kind of clutch sometimes. The reason why I max E over Q, even though Q does more damage, is because the E allows you to safe poke extremely easy and also has a shorter cooldown, giving you a higher overall DPS in a prolonged fight. Also, it's simply just much easier to hit. The W does not scale that well, so I max it last. And of course, put points into your ultimate whenever possible. Lastly, for item builds, and Lux build's actually kind of interesting, with a lot of room to build differently. If you're getting really fed, you can actually build full on AP, and that will be viable, because the reason why you usually don't build AP is because it takes way too long to build the necessary items. But if you're getting a lot of kills, not just assists, it can actually be really strong. Start with Sorcerer's Shoes or Ionian Shoes into an Athene's or Rod of Ages, and you can build Zonia's or Deathcap depending on how much you want to rely on your positioning, and likely avoid Staff to finish up. That is a standard AP build, but AP builds are usually situational, so I wouldn't build that in every game I want to build AP. And you do still need to buy wards, so building a Sightstone is probably what you should do as well. If you are building support though, I would start Fairy Charm, 3 wards, and 2 health potions. When you back, build a Sightstone if you have enough, otherwise build Philosopher's Stone into the full Ruby Sightstone, but be sure to buy boots. If it is before 15 minutes or so, you can buy a Kage's or Chalice before the Ruby Sightstone, but that is not likely to happen. At this point I would build Ionian boots and then my first major item. I would build Aegis into Bulwark if I'm getting fed with assists or even kills, or otherwise build Locket or Shurelya's depending on what your team needs. Then build the other one right after, or if you bought a Kage's or Chalice, you can build that into a Shard of True Ice or Mikhail's Crucible. You can build a Zeke's at the end if you have the team for it, but you will likely never get to that 5th item. My ideal build would be Ionian Boots, Bulwark, Locket, Shurelya's, Ruby Sightstone, and a 6th slot for extra wards. If your team needs it, you should build an Oracle's, but I usually just stick to buying a lot of pink wards since the Oracle nerfs. And of course, as a support, always remember to buy lots of wards, even in addition to the Sightstone. So, that's it for my Lux support guide. I'd love it if you could support me with a like or some feedback in the comments. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer those in the comments too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.